Now available in paperback and e-readers, John Haynes' Illuminati, a man who rules the world, takes on the head of the global elite in this all-new action-packed John Haynes series adventure. Get your copy of John Haynes' Illuminati in paperback and e-readers at Amazon.com and online booksellers everywhere. The FBI is trying to learn more about the suspect who participated in the attempted assassination of former President Donald Trump.
More now on the attempted assassination of Donald Trump. This morning, investigators are focusing on the shooter, who the FBI has identified as 20-year-old Thomas Matthew Crooks.
Crooks was killed by a Secret Service sniper. CBS Philadelphia's Ross DiMattei is live in Bethel Park, Pennsylvania. And Ross, you are in the shooter Matthew Crooks' neighborhood. Can you tell us what's going on there right now and what more are we learning about him?
Sure. So, Natalie and Cindy, this, like you mentioned, is Thomas Crooks' hometown. This is actually the house behind me is where he was living with his parents prior to this rally and the subsequent shooting. And right now, there are a lot of media outlets here. Of course, we're all trying to get to the bottom line question, which is why did Thomas Crooks want to assassinate the former president and make sure that he did not become the next president of the United States? And that's essentially why we came to his hometown. It's a suburb of Pittsburgh, about 10 minutes south of Pittsburgh. We were in Butler yesterday, which is about an hour north of us. And that's where the rally was held. And what we've learned is that Thomas Crooks remains somewhat of a mystery. On the one hand, we know that he was a registered Republican. On the other hand, we also know that he made a $15 donation at some point in the recent past towards a democratically aligned group. And then if you talk to some of his former classmates, some of them say that he was a good student who enjoyed studying history and government and was well liked by his teachers. Other students, other former classmates of his, say that he was a bit of a loner who was would sit alone at lunch and would also be bullied quite a bit. So, again, conflicting reports about who exactly Thomas Crooks was. I think what we can say for certain is that he did not want former President Donald Trump to become the next president. But the question of why specifically he didn't want him to be the next president, that remains a mystery.
And Ross, you were able to go back to the rally site after the shooting. What was it like there when you got back?
Yeah, we were there the morning after, and we really wanted to speak with some of the folks who had gone to the rally, and they were not hard to find. They came in droves back to the site of the rally. You would think maybe they would want to stay away. They just witnessed this chaotic shooting scene and the former president being grazed in the ear. But no, those residents in Butler, that is strong Trump territory, and they told us in droves that they really wanted to talk about what exactly happened. They said it was so chaotic in the moment. Many of them didn't even know that shots were fired. Some of them talked about potentially witnessing a technical malfunction. Maybe some speakers had exploded. They really didn't know what had happened in the moment. And then, of course, everyone was ducking and running to get out of there after they had put together that there had been a shooting. They didn't quite know it was an assassination attempt at the time, but they returned the next day to kind of talk amongst each other and talk with us in the media about what exactly happened and some of their feelings there. And they said it was really chaotic and scary, of course, but they also wanted to show their support for the former president. I mentioned that is a strong red territory. They voted in favor of former President Trump in both 2016 and 2020, and they said that they wanted to reiterate that they remain loyal to the former president, and they wanted to show their support.
Russ, thank you so much for your reporting, and be sure to stay with CBS 2 as we continue to bring you the latest on the assassination attempt against former President Trump. We will have live coverage here on air, online, streaming on CBS News New York.
Now, the FBI and the Secret Service have identified the shooter as being 20-year-old Thomas Matthew Crooks from Bethel Park, Pennsylvania. And according to the FBI and the Secret Service, Thomas Matthew Crooks allegedly went to the rally that was going on at Butler, Pennsylvania, that President Trump was having. and looking to participate in an attempt to assassinate him. Now, as Thomas Matthew Crooks went to this rally in Butler, Pennsylvania, he took a ladder out of his vehicle and allegedly used it to climb up on the rooftop of a building about 500 feet away. And as he looked to climb up on this rooftop, he looked to take an AR-style weapon he had basically stolen from his father, that his father had purchased legally, and looked to use this AR-style rifle to participate in the attempt to assassinate former President Donald Trump. Now, as he was getting on the rooftop of this building, a police officer noticed Thomas Matthew Crooks on the roof and climbed up to look to confront him. And as the police officer tried to confront him, Thomas Matthew Crooks fired several shots at the officer, forcing him to leave the ladder and leave the scene to preserve his life. And in those moments, this is where Thomas Matthew Crooks quickly started to crawl up on the rooftop. And as he crawled up on the rooftop, he looked to line up a sight of the former president. And this is where spectators who came to the Trump rally started to notice this shooter and started to call him out. And as they called him out, Thomas Matthew Crooks managed to get off a series of shots that wound up taking the life of a 50-year-old firefighter and injuring 2 other people, and before winding up clipping former President Donald Trump in the ear, before Secret Service agents were able to shoot and kill Thomas Matthew Crooks and neutralize his threat. Now, the FBI and the Secret Service see the attempted assassination of former President Donald Trump by Thomas Matthew Crooks as an isolated incident by an individual who acted alone. But when I take a critical examination of the actions of Thomas Matthew Crooks, they definitely fit the pattern and profile for beta males that I talk about in my book, The Man Crisis. Now, people who have been doing investigations into the background of Thomas Matthew Crooks say that he was a loner who was bullied and picked on, and that could have basically laid the foundation for the motive for the attempted assassination of former President Donald Trump, because Thomas Matthew Crooks, if he was bullied and picked on by his peers, was definitely somebody who was seething and simmering and boiling in anger for an extended period of time. And as he was simmering and boiling in anger and staying to himself, he basically was entering into a place that I call in The Man Crisis a rose-colored reality. And as he was living in the rose-colored reality, he wasn't seeing the world from the perspective we all see it as reality. No, he was seeing everything that looked similar to the real world from a completely distorted perspective. And from that distorted perspective, as he was in isolation, what he did was enter a place I call the secret world in The Man Crisis. Now, the secret world is a place that beta males go to when they feel like they cannot measure up and feel adequate in our real world. And in that secret world is a place where these men feel safe to express their natural masculinity and in some cases their natural sexuality. And in the secret world is where these men wind up starting to participate in antisocial behaviors, and they start to participate in these antisocial behaviors in the secret world. And it's in the secret world where they feel adequate about being masculine and in some cases sexual. And this is where I believe the foundation for the motive for Thomas Matthew Crooks looking to participate in the attempted assassination of former President Donald Trump started. Now, Thomas Matthew Crooks, as he was this loner who just graduated from high school, started working in a nursing home. And as he was working in that nursing home, I believe he was still simmering and boiling in anger about all the mistreatment he received in high school. And as he was simmering and boiling in anger, he started to register to vote. Now, according to reports, he was a registered Republican in the beginning. However, he quickly changed. He went to go out here and drop a donation to the Democratic Party. And I believe it was that donation that he dropped to the Democratic Party that might have been the second building block as related to a possible motive for looking to attempt to assassinate the president. And I believe, based on what has been presented as related to the facts of this attempted assassination, maybe Thomas Matthew Crooks was looking to try to find a way to be the hero and get respect, and basically created a covert contract between himself and the world, where he believed that if he went out here and participated in assassinating former President Donald Trump, he would be able to be seen as a hero. Because when it comes to beta males who live in rose-colored realities and are in the secret world, they don't really think very critically or use logic and reason, and even though they may be very good with knowledge, and they say Thomas Matthew Crooks was a very intelligent person, but without good social and interpersonal skills, what happens is with beta males is that they are in their rose-colored reality all by themselves, and there's nobody there to really sit down and talk to these individuals and let them know where there are consequences for their actions. So Thomas Matthew Crooks, as I see it, basically was one of these young guys who was idealistic and in his it just turned 20. So this basically teenager was sitting there with all of these ideals that he had as related to the rose-colored reality he created and imagined for himself. And in that idea that he imagined, he believed that he would possibly be perceived as a hero if he went out here and looked to assassinate the president, and people would basically, again, see him as some sort of hero. That could possibly be one of the motivations for Thomas Matthew Crooks to participate in looking to assassinate the former President Donald Trump, and that could have been further exacerbated possibly by what he was watching on the media and possibly what he was watching on places like social media. Now, according to reports, they say that there wasn't much information with Thomas Matthew Crooks on social media, but that does not mean that he had access to the internet, and that doesn't mean that he possibly was watching things about the former president on platforms like YouTube, or looking at things on platforms like Yahoo News or Fox News, and watching all of this media about the former president possibly was the thing that made him possibly feel more and more angry, and possibly feel like this could possibly be an opportunity for him to be that hero he's always wanted to be. And as he possibly projected all of his anger onto the former president for making the State of the Union chaotic, he believed that possibly eliminating the former president would make the nation a lot more stable. Because when it comes to, again, beta males that again don't live in our reality, and in their reality, if their world is not smooth, what they do is look to make it smooth by participating in extreme behaviors. And that's possibly what was the motivation for Thomas Matthew Crooks to participate in that attempted assassination. Him possibly sitting there watching a lot of news on leftist platforms like CNN and mainstream media, where they have been talking for several years about how former President Trump has basically been, in their attempts to try to prosecute him, has basically wound up being able to avoid any sort of jail time with the recent Supreme Court ruling. And with the disastrous debate of Joe Biden, this possibly was the thing that triggered Thomas Matthew Crooks to believe that he had to take action. With the complete failure to be able to eliminate Donald Trump from the political circles of gaining power, Thomas Matthew Crooks probably felt like, since the courts couldn't do anything about him, his fellow Americans continue to support Donald Trump, he needed to go out here and take action on his own, and felt he needed to take action on his own because he felt Donald Trump was such a threat that the only way to eliminate that threat was to go out here and do it himself. Because whenever a beta male feels like there is no actual solution as related to conflict resolution that people can do, they want to take things into their own hands, and they believe if they do take things into their own hands, they will be able to completely neutralize the problem and be able to go back to their smooth world. However, Thomas Matthew Crooks, basically, as he was acting on his feelings about Donald Trump, basically looked to escalate this situation to an extreme, and looked to escalate the situation to an extreme to the point where he wanted to again take the life of the former president. And basically, as he looked to take the life of the former president, showed how there were major breaches in the security of the Secret Service, showed how the Secret Service basically had a hole in it that he was able to slip through, and be able to take a shot at the former president, a shot that he thought possibly would lead to him winding up becoming a hero, in the eyes of those on the far left, individuals who were polarized by him, by a lot of mainstream media that has been presented over the last 16 years. Because over the last 16 years, ever since the election of Barack Obama, we have seen mainstream media go out and basically polarize the public. And as it presents this polarized media to the public, what has happened is individuals like Thomas Matthew Crooks, who grew up in an age of the internet, basically are getting this polarized media, which is basically designed to fuel people's emotions, and fuel people's emotions to feel a certain way and not really think critically about the information presented to them. Now, this is an approach of journalism that came out of the tabloids that basically wanted to sensationalize stories. And as we've had this new sensationalized news model, the people who grew up with it are basically watching this media and not really thinking critically and objectively about that information the way we saw it many years ago. I mean, in the days of Walter Cronkite, there was a different type of journalism where people were, again, presented objective facts. But the whole thing is, with this sensationalized journalism, we get subjective opinion presented to us. And Thomas Matthew Crooks, growing up in that age, imbibed this media, which taught him to see Donald Trump as an enemy, and see Donald Trump as an enemy to the point where he was seething in anger and about his world being disrupted from being smooth, and looking to go out here and find a way to make his world smooth once more by eliminating the person who he thought was making his life rough. And listening to a lot of this media, basically, I believe, programmed this idea in his mind that somebody needed to do something about Donald Trump, because as he was sitting there watching this media and possibly watching information on places like YouTube, what was happening was he was being fed this information and even misinformation on places like YouTube, and the algorithm basically fed him more and more content that basically made it where he was in an echo chamber. And as he was in this echo chamber, he was possibly hearing things about former President Donald Trump that demonized him. And these things that demonized him basically was the thing that I think possibly triggered the motive for him to look to participate in this assassination attempt on the president's life. It basically was him in this echo chamber of the slanted media and misinformation about the former president. This compounded with Joe Biden's disastrous debate performance basically put him on a road where he felt like he had to do something in order to save America as part of his covert contract. He believed that he needed to save America from the evil of Donald Trump that was keeping his world from being smooth, and he believed that if he went out here and did this, he would possibly be seen as a hero. That's what I believe was the motive possibly for the attempt on former President Donald Trump's life by Thomas Matthew Crooks. He felt powerless about the situation as related to we the people dealing with Donald Trump. He felt powerless about we the people being able to go out and make a choice of our own regarding Donald Trump as a candidate at the polls. And since he felt powerless about people going out here and making their decision to be able to deal with Donald Trump at the polls, he decided that he needed to take action on his own, and he believed that he needed to take this action on his own in order to dispatch of the threat of Donald Trump taking the presidency, based on all of the rhetoric he had been hearing in mainstream media and places like social media such as YouTube. Because in mainstream and social media, there have been constant things deriding Donald Trump, such as the numerous civil and criminal cases brought by prosecutors like Alvin Bragg and Fani Willis and Jack Smith. And there's also been a lot of other things that, again, were made to demonize Donald Trump, such as the allegations of him participating in a sex crime, and people like actress Taraji P. Henson getting on the BET Awards and talking about Project 2025 and saying that if Donald Trump got elected, he would implement Project 2025. Again, all these pieces presented in slanted mainstream media really, again, fueled the fire for this individual in this polarized media outlets and media environment that Thomas Matthew Crooks grew up in. And with him being young and him not being fully developed as a man to have those critical thinking skills to be able to discern this information from misinformation, what happened with Thomas Matthew Crooks is he took a lot of that information and misinformation personally, and as it went through the filter of his rose-colored reality, this is where he saw Donald Trump as the ultimate Satan, or the ultimate bane of America that was going to destroy the country, and thought the only way to deal with Donald Trump was to, again, take Donald Trump's life. That's the way he felt he could make life smooth for most Americans again. And that's how this beta male possibly had his motive to get on that rooftop on that Saturday and look to participate in the attempt to assassinate the president and take his life. He believed that by taking the president's life, he would possibly make the world smooth for Americans once again and make it a world where there would be no conflicts, problems, or obstacles as related to Donald Trump menacing the country. That's what I believe Thomas Matthew Crooks was motivated to do on that Saturday. I believe what he was motivated to do that Saturday was make life smooth for Americans and be that kind of hero. I mean, I believe that he was acting alone because he was a loner in the past and didn't fit into society, and thought that he could possibly be able to get acceptance into society by participating in this violent act. Because oftentimes with beta males, when they cannot feel like they can achieve or accomplish anything, they look to go out in infamy, and this has been shown with the pattern of behavior by other mass shooters that I have done research on, such as Elliot Rodger and Peyton Gendron. And when I look at Thomas Matthew Crooks' behavior, it definitely starts to fit a further escalating pattern I'm seeing in America's man crisis, an escalating pattern as related to America's man crisis, where one, the shooters are getting younger, and two, the shooters basically are getting a lot of motivation, I believe, from what I'm seeing as these media echo chambers or internet echo chambers, where these young children are basically bombarded with all sorts of slanted information and misinformation. And as they are bombarded with slanted information and misinformation from media outlets and social media outlets, what is happening is that they are entering these echo chambers, because as they get this slanted information from mainstream media and they get misinformation from social media, what happens is these algorithms, what they do on social media is feed these individuals more information that basically agrees with whatever talking points they're watching. And as they get fed this misinformation from these social media platforms, and they get all of this media that basically agrees with a certain talking point, what this does is wind up radicalizing an individual based on whatever talking points they're watching. And this is what happened in the case of mass shooter Peyton Gendron, who was 18 years old. He basically was watching a lot of racist and white supremacist media fed to him on different websites, and different YouTube videos, and as he did his searches on platforms like Google and many others, what he did was go out here and was being fed the same type of information that basically fit his viewpoints, and that basically radicalized him to believe that he needed to go to the top supermarket in upstate New York and murder black people. And the same thing could, I believe, happen here, because I'm seeing a pattern of the behavior with these younger shooters, in that they possibly were sitting there all day watching all sorts of media such as CNN and social media such as YouTube, and doing searches on these different things. And as they did these searches, again, they basically were being fed information that agreed with their viewpoints, and this is what led to them becoming radicalized as related to their thinking, similar to what has happened with a lot of these individuals who are participating in Islamic radicalism and terrorism. They believed that, again, they needed to go out here and do something because of the misinformation that they were being fed by the slanted mainstream media and the slanted social media. And that biased media basically was like propaganda, feeding these individuals and programming them with an idea of an enemy they needed to neutralize. And that possibly was, again, what motivated Thomas Matthew Crooks to go out here and look to participate in the form of social justice of trying to take the life of former President Donald Trump, looking to take his life because they felt like he was a threat to global and national security, and he wanted to go out here and neutralize that threat to make the world safe and make his world smooth once more. I'm going to keep repeating that because I want you to understand how, beta males think. They want to have their smooth world where there are no conflicts, problems, or obstacles, and they will go to extremes to try to solve those problems and look to participate in extreme violence to solve those problems. And that's basically what I believe was the motive for Thomas Matthew Crooks to participate in this attempted assassination of former President Donald Trump. He felt that Donald Trump was a threat to the country, and felt that so much that he was a threat, even though he was a registered Republican politically, but that really doesn't mean anything. Sometimes people register because they want to vote against a certain candidate, but he felt strongly enough to get on that rooftop and look to take the life of the former president. That's how strongly Thomas Matthew Crooks felt about the situation, and sadly, Thomas Matthew Crooks was not having anybody there to talk to as related to his feelings about the president, and because he didn't have anybody he felt he could talk to, there was nobody there to let him know about the reality of this situation or the consequences of his actions. And that's where Thomas Matthew Crooks basically was on the road to becoming a man in crisis, because he did not have that person there to give him any sort of guidance on how to navigate life in the real world, because it's not for one man to go out here and participate in looking to take the life of a former president. No, we the people are supposed to be able to make that choice of who we choose to be our president. And again, it's up to the voters to decide whether Donald Trump is the person they want to pick as their candidate to be the next president of the United States. And if you don't like that choice, sadly, that's just part of life in this country, because in this country there are losers and winners. But what Thomas Matthew Crooks wanted to do was win. He wanted to gain a victory in life that he felt would make him a star in society and be an icon of history. He thought he could go out here and participate in the same type of behavior that Lee Harvey Oswald allegedly wanted to do as related to the assassination of President John F. Kennedy. Now, during the time of John F. Kennedy, many people were upset that Kennedy was looking to support civil rights, and that could have possibly been the motivation for Lee Harvey Oswald to participate in the assassination of John F. Kennedy. But the whole idea of individuals acting alone and in these rogue operations basically is behavior that is antisocial and participated in by antisocial men who are dysfunctional because they believe they need to go to extremes to solve problems that they can't control. and believe they need to go out and go to these extremes because they don't really know how to conflict resolve, don't know how to problem solve, don't know how to think critically, don't know how to do these things. And because they don't know how to do these things, what these individuals do is go out and participate in these kinds of crimes, where they look to take the lives of a presidential candidate, believing that this will sway the election, when in actuality it really would make things worse, because when you have polarized people who are caught up in their feelings about politics, what this does is basically escalate a situation to the point where everything is going to get extremely worse, because when you have people who are polarized and in their emotions, again, what this can do is set off a spark worse than the George Floyd riots did when George Floyd lost his life during the pandemic. Because when you have millions of people who are seething in anger and frustrated about the direction of the country, an assassination of Donald Trump would basically make the country basically explode with the same rage that Thomas Matthew Crooks had, and we would go from a country that's in a man crisis to a just serious situation. And again, I try to be careful with my words here because I know that people are polarized politically in this country, and as they are polarized politically in this country, and we have this man crisis going on to the complete deterioration of the family, we could see in this situation with Thomas Matthew Crooks. Even though he had a father in his life, his father really didn't have any connection to him, and most people didn't have a connection to him. And because no one had a connection to him, nobody was there to talk to Thomas Matthew Crooks and let him know that his behavior was out of line. Nobody was there to let him know that his behavior was out of line and out of control. And this basically put the entire, again, nation at risk with this whole polarization situation, a polarization situation so bad that you have many politicians now trying to cool things off and trying to get people toned down, because what's happened is they see that people are being motivated to participate in violence, but this violence has been something people have been thinking about for years, because as we've had this escalation of violence with mass shooters, they have basically been out here participating in this violence because they are frustrated and angry about the state of their lives. And as they're frustrated and angry about the state of their lives and simmering and boiling in anger, we are reaching a political boiling point in this country where things may explode, because over the last 16 years since the Barack Obama candidacy, we have had the mainstream media going out here polarizing people. We've had people talking about Barack Obama's citizenship, which was the thing that basically started this whole powder keg and packing down the TNT. I mean, that, and then you had Donald Trump running for office based on these polarized things, and again, riling up people on the far right. And with people riled up on the far right, we saw incidents like the 2016 election, where we saw people on the far left again exploding in anger because they couldn't accept that Donald Trump had become president. Then we had the pandemic, which further packed down more TNT, and then we had the January 6th riots, which packed down more TNT. And as we had these prosecutions of Donald Trump by Alvin Bragg, and the conviction by Alvin Bragg, and the whole the civil lawsuit against Donald Trump, again, all these different judgments, and then the Supreme Court coming in, and then the disastrous Joe Biden debate, all of these things packed down like TNT, and basically we almost had a spark that set off an explosion, because when you have polarized people basically are in a place where they are, again, an atomic bomb, and this atomic bomb is about to, again, explode, because people do not really understand the severity of the man crisis in this country, or the severity of the situation that was created by mainstream media and social media with algorithms and fueling these fires. A lot of people want to try, like Joe Biden, want to try to cool things down, But the way to cool things down is the three-pronged approach. One, social media is going to have to stop using these algorithms to feed people information and misinformation. Two, mainstream media is going to have to stop with this whole polarized and sensationalized journalism and switch back to objective journalism. And three, there's going to have to be an investment in men so that they don't wind up on the road to becoming men in crisis. This is the overall solution for dealing with this situation as related to trying to stave off this powder keg as related to America, stave off this powder keg as related to America and the man crisis, because we are in a situation where the country is about to explode, and again, may possibly explode because we have not acknowledged this man crisis going on in this country with people like Thomas Matthew Crooks, men who do not know how to navigate life as men because of 60 years of us looking not to raise boys to become healthy men. And this man crisis is something America doesn't want to acknowledge because we don't want to acknowledge the way we parent children isn't creating healthy men. No, it's creating men in crisis who may possibly be putting the nation further on the road to being in crisis because they don't know how to lead as a man, don't know how to navigate life as a man, don't know how to conflict resolve as a man. And that's the thing that possibly, as a nation looking at a man crisis, that we really need to acknowledge as related to the sad and scary state of our union. Now, if you want to learn more about what motivates beta males to participate in their dysfunctional and violent behavior and how to stop them from participating in this kind of behavior by identifying that behavior, you can pick up my book, The Man Crisis, on Amazon.com in paperback and Kindle format. You can also find The Man Crisis at other online booksellers like Draft the Digital, Google Play, Barnes & Noble, and big box retailers like Walmart and Target. And if you'd like to see me make more videos about the man crisis, you can send a donation to the Patreon, the PayPal, or the Cash App by clicking the links in the description box. That's all I have to say for this video. You can comment, rate, and subscribe. Now available in paperback and Kindle Unlimited, The Man Crisis. Learn why so many men are struggling to find their way in an increasingly gynocentric world in The Man Crisis. Get your copy of The Man Crisis in paperback and Kindle Unlimited today. Support Black-owned and Black-operated digital broadcast media. www.niceradionetwork.com. Nice Radio Network, broadcasting 24 hours a day, 7 days a week.